Hey, how's it going? And the 7870 is a legendary GPU, as when it was released back in 2012, it was labeled as probably the best bang for your buck at the time. It was so good, in fact, that Sony even used a slightly lower clocked and cut down version of it in their next generation console at the time, which was the PS4. And because of that, this old mid-range GPU is still being supported 9 years later. It's gone through DirectX 11, Mantle, if you can even remember if that was a thing, multiple OpenGL standards, and now DirectX 12 and Vulkan. And being based on the GCN architecture, the 7870 features 1280 cores, 2GB of GDDR5 memory, and because this is the GHz edition, has a core clock of 1000 MHz or 1 GHz. And back in 2012, this mid-range card would have cost around $350 new. But today, even in the GPU apocalypse, these cards can be had for around $40 to $60, which makes them pretty compelling. But does that mean you should pick one up and use it in 2021? Well, to start things off, I wanted to showcase how much performance you really got when this card was released. Back in 2013, Bioshock was released and was a really good showcase as to how much performance and power you really got in this card, as this game was rather demanding in higher resolutions, which was 1080p at the time, and with all the settings cranked up. And here we have at 1080p Ultra settings, the 7870 was able to achieve 96.8 FPS average, which is a really solid number, considering that the equivalent Xbox or PS3 at the time was only achieving 720p, lowish settings around 30 FPS.
Stay where you are.
What are you doing? Get the girl! Get off of me! Get away from me!
But fast forwarding to a more modern title, Black Ops Cold War was a title that I recently played with this card back in October with the beta, and found out that it wasn't really playable. But at least as of February and the latest patch with this game, I'm happy to say that at 720p low settings, I saw none of the weird texture issues or frame rate issues that I was having with this card. So this card is definitely a lot more playable with the actual release version of the game versus the beta. As far as the numbers go, I did have to turn the resolution down to 720p and at the lowest settings, but it was a smooth experience with those settings with an average of 54 FPS. So it's while the resolution's not ideal, it was a playable experience. Modern Warfare Warzone was also another title that was giving me troubles when I was testing this card out about 6 months ago, and I'm happy to say that this card is playable as well today. I was able to achieve a smooth 60 FPS, but at the cost of having to lower the resolution down to 720p and using the lowest settings. But with 1% and 0.1% lows, around 40 to 30 FPS, it was a very respectable and playable experience. And as long as you don't mind a sort of blurry or just a lower resolution look, this is a very playable experience on this card. Next we got GTA 5, and at 1080p medium settings, we saw an average of 43.3 FPS. A very solid experience and a very stable frame rate for this game, as it was about on par with the PS4 and Xbox One version, which you should expect as the it is practically the same graphics card. So really nothing new here, but it is nice to see that it is a very playable experience on the PC version.
Go! Get us right up alongside that limo! Are you trying to give me a heart attack?
Next, we have the newest Need for Speed title, Need for Speed Heat, with solid music, solid gameplay experience, and solid frame rates with this graphics card. At 1080p low settings, we saw an average of 35 FPS, which is a rather respectable number given that's probably the same thing you're getting on an Xbox One or PS4. There was some stutters here and there with a 0.1% low of 24 FPS, but it really wasn't that bad. It was more of either the start of the race or just sort of driving around, you'll get a stutter here and there. Overall, it's a pretty solid experience and a nice win for the 7870. And finally, we have Cyberpunk 2077. At 720p lowest settings, not even those settings could help play this game properly. With an average of 24 FPS and a abysmal 0.1% low of 6.8 FPS, this was not a very good experience. I mean, it's playable, I guess, if you really want to go for the story. But this is definitely not a playable experience, and I was kind of expecting it to be that way, as that's pretty consistent as to what the console's experience was like. It's pretty much unplayable on those, and well, not completely unplayable. I didn't see any like game breaking glitches or anything in my short time playing it. It was still a rather poor experience and not what you would call ideal. But yeah, there you guys have it. That's going to do it for the benchmarks. Some final thoughts about this card. I was really impressed as still the performance you were able to get on this almost 10-year-old card. The 7000 series is still probably one of my favorite series that AMD has released. It's been the most supported and has really re-emphasized that total fine wine technology that just really meant that AMD basically kept supporting this thing throughout the years. And given the current market conditions of graphics cards at the moment, this is a rather budget-friendly alternative to the higher-end cards if you keep your expectations in mind. Playing at 720p is probably the best for this card with newer titles, but it's still playable and it's still a decent experience for the money. Anyways, that's gonna be for me on this video. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully you have a good one. Take care now. Bye.